It is okay if loving yourself isn't instantaneous. Loving ourselves is a beautiful gift, but what if I told you that it's a practice? Hi, I'm Derek Raleigh. I'm a therapist, all-around nerd, and I'm here to help you on your journey to mindfulness, or to at least remind you that it is in fact a journey, and it's okay that we need to take some steps along the way. You can't always leap to loving yourself when you've been used to self-doubt, low self-esteem, abuse, or trauma. Even if you've had that, as I like to say, leave it to beaver childhood, that doesn't mean you have not walked away with your own wounds, your own lack of self-confidence, and a difficult time loving yourself. It's a normal experience for a lot of folks. A lot of well-meaning advice skips over how many of us have heard, you have to love yourself before you can have a healthy relationship. What does that mean? Does that mean we can't have a healthy relationship until we've undone every hurt, every insecurity, and every wound? No. It's oversimplifying a complex process. This advice isn't entirely wrong in that it is important for us to demonstrate acts of love towards ourselves. But how we frame it is limited. Instead of pretending loving ourselves is done at the snap of the fingers, let's break down 5 practice mindsets that can enhance our well-being, self-care, and self-compassion, even if we're not already at that full-on loving ourselves place. Acknowledge you are human, and human beings deserve compassion. We can practice compassion for others while holding boundaries, recognizing flaws in ourselves and others, and recognizing flaws simultaneously with seeing humanity. We are human. By being human, we will show us human traits. 2, with that, accept that perfection isn't possible, and imperfection can create growth. If you only see yourself as perfect or imperfect, then you are engaged in a cognitive distortion, often referred to as black and white thinking or generalizing as well. It can touch on other cognitive distortions, but those are the 2 I often see. When we fall into those distortions, we are unable to see reality objectively or fairly to the same extent, and we have to reorient ourselves back to a middle ground. For some of my clients, I have them make a list for every negative comment or every negative thing they say about themselves. They have to write one nice thing, one strength, or one accomplishment. Whether it's they managed to get out of bed that day or ran the Boston Marathon, it doesn't matter. So they have to choose one. But the important thing in that practice is recognizing 2 things can be true. We can be flawed, and we're gonna be flawed, and we can still be capable of good. We can still have strengths. We can still even capitalize on aspects of things that might be a weakness to turn them into strengths. And that is the mindset that can help us move towards growth and away from self-judgment. 3, be mindfully compassionate. Mindful self-compassion involves treating oneself with the same kindness and understanding as one would a close friend in times of suffering. If my clients are listening, and some of you have probably heard the whole, what would you say to your best friend in this situation? As a means of getting people to start thinking about, why are you holding yourself to a different standard than someone you love or care for, right? Mindful self-compassion combines mindfulness, which is presence or the awareness and acceptance of the present moment, with self-compassion, which is the extending of warmth towards ourselves, the extending of care towards ourselves. This practice helps individuals recognize and alleviate pain with less judgment. It allows us to say, I am suffering, and that suffering doesn't always define me. By cultivating mindful self-compassion, people enhance their emotional resilience and overall well-being. Studies show lower stress levels when we practice more mindful self-compassion. We start challenging negative distortions in thinking. If you believe that human beings deserve compassion, then we must follow through and ask, What if you too are deserving of compassion, nurturing, and kindness? What if you too are worthy of the treatment of your best friend, of your child, of your favorite parent, of your favorite sibling? I even had, what if your dog became a person just now and they said these things? What would you do then? It doesn't matter how we get ourselves thinking that way, but when we start thinking about how we extend compassion to others, we also have to start thinking about how we extend it to ourselves, because we're often hardest on ourselves. 4, find ways to then engage in kindness to yourself. So take self-compassion and turn it into action. Merge these two things. They're really good friends if you let them. This may come in the form of self-care or addressing basic needs. I like to call them the foundational needs: sleep, nutrition. In some cases, and this is a little higher up the foundation list because it's a difficult one, housing. If you are living in a situation that is so negative that it's affecting you, you can work with local services. For some of us, we're lucky to have sort of friend communities, and others to find strategies to get out of that environment or reduce the amount of time in that environment. Whatever it takes, it is putting ourselves in an optimal state to begin processing feeling better. This might also be engaging in therapy or coaching, which has the benefit of sometimes holding ourselves accountable for compassionate behavior towards ourselves and others. If you are human and deserve kindness, find small ways to act on it. Sorry, one of my family members was making a lot of noise. If you are human and deserve kindness, find small ways to act on it. For me, this is buying fancy teas, putting on my favorite lipstick, taking a shower with a fancy soap. I love fancy soap. Just as much as taking a vacation, just as much as doing those big changes. Self-care is overused, but the reason is a lot of us neglect the small things that add up, and we also don't celebrate or focus on them. We get so caught up in everything else, we just stop. We stop thinking about them. We start getting caught up in hating ourselves, doubting ourselves, judging ourselves. If we engage in kindness, it is much easier to believe that the person receiving kindness, in this case us, deserves kindness. It creates a positive feedback loop. It creates a kink in the system of negative self-treatment. And all it takes is that kink for us to start diverting our habituated negative reactions. Now, the last one is 5. Acknowledge your needs and then set boundaries. I discuss setting boundaries in 2 ways with my clients. 1, setting boundaries as establishing clear and healthy limits in relationships and interactions to protect one's well-being and, hopefully, personal integrity. Basically, that is your traditional idea of talking about boundaries. It's the most common way of talking about boundaries. Highlighting our lines in the sand, saying, I won't let you talk to me that way. I won't let you peer pressure me into doing this or that. That is setting boundaries. Consent is a form of setting boundaries, for example, right? But we also must engage in the second, which is 2, setting personal boundaries for oneself, which means defining and adhering to one's limits, regardless of what others do. That's a hard one. Boundaries with others are very easy to set in anger. It's a lot harder to hold ourselves accountable once we've emotionally regulated. A lot of people deep down are afraid of loving themselves because they're afraid to set boundaries. They are afraid to stop people pleasing. A lot of people are also afraid of emotionally regulating because they will no longer be able to fall back on anger to set boundaries. And the main way they've been able to set boundaries is anger. One of the things that I work with a lot of people on is assertive communication. And we don't learn it. We often don't learn it until somebody works on it with us. So I really want you to keep that in mind, that boundaries are twofold. Now, boundaries also evolve and shift over time, at least for most of us. For my clients in an intimacy or kink positive community, you'll recognize some of this. Because boundaries evolve over time, things can go from what some might call hard limits, no-goes, refusals, and become different over time. Now, so long as that change is authentic to you, hasn't been forced, and is something you want, that is a beautiful thing. If you have said, I don't want to take a trip to the Great Falls. Your partner really wants to, and they haven't hounded you about it. They have brought it up maybe, and as you've learned more, you have reconsidered your stance. That's one thing. It's also one thing to go, I am okay. This is not a hard boundary for me. I am willing to go and compromise. So I'll go with you, but I want to pick one restaurant to stop through that I really like, even if you aren't a fan of the food. For me, I can live with that. I'll find something to eat anywhere. But that aside, boundary evolution is really natural. Regardless of what our boundaries are, they are about setting limits for ourselves, defining and adhering to our limits, our values, our boundaries. And that means not just consequences for others, but consequences for us. This practice of boundary setting empowers all of us to prioritize our needs, maintain a sense of autonomy, build a sense of autonomy, and somewhat ironically better enable us to compromise when we so choose. So there's 5 key mindsets that help us when we are still on that journey to self-love. Love is not automatic. The truth is, self-love is a practice that begins with small steps. You don't have to love yourself to begin the journey of caring for yourself, of deciding to treat all humans a certain way, either. And that journey enables you to be better towards the people you may love. And that possibility includes you. Ponder that throughout your week. Take some time. I'm Derek Crawley, and I hope that you have a beautiful, peaceful, and positive rest of the week. And may your journey be one that brings you smiles and joy. Thank you. Take care.